Deep in the Aravalli Hills of Rajasthan stands a fortress with a highly unusual sign at its main gate. Installed by the Archaeological Survey of India, the message is remarkably blunt. Entering the premises after sunset is strictly prohibited. Locals often point to a cautionary tale to explain the curfew. As the story goes, 3 friends ignored the warning and slipped inside under the cover of darkness. One fell into a dry, ruined well. His friends managed to pull him out, but as they raced to the hospital, their car crashed, killing all 3 on the spot. Curious, looking at Bhangarh today, it is easy to see how these stories take root. At its peak, this was a sprawling royal city, containing over 9,000 homes, vast marketplaces, and massive temples. Today, it is a frozen ghost town. Entire streets of stone walls remain intact, yet almost every single structure is completely missing its roof. The foundational myth blames this decay on a dark practitioner of magic named Singhiya. According to the legend, Singhiya fell in love with Princess Ratnavati of Bhangarh. When she rejected him, he weaponized his dying breath to curse the entire city, declaring that its roofs would collapse, its people would perish, and their souls would be trapped within the walls forever. Modern visitors constantly report experiences that seem to validate this old lore. Tourists describe a sudden, heavy feeling of being watched, unexplainable temperature drops, and the faint, unmistakable sound of women weeping in the dark. These terrifying physical sensations likely originate in the invisible boundaries of human biology, triggered by the site's unique physical environment and the natural forces acting upon the human nervous system. To understand what people are actually experiencing, we have to look at infrasound. These are sound waves that vibrate at frequencies below 20 Hz. That is the lower limit of human hearing, meaning you cannot consciously hear these noises, but your body can physically feel the vibrations. In the 1980s, a British engineer named Vic Tandy was working alone in a laboratory when he suddenly felt a deep sense of dread and saw a gray, shadowy figure in his peripheral vision. He later discovered that a newly installed extractor fan was emitting an exact frequency of 19 Hz. That specific frequency resonates with the human eyeball, causing it to vibrate slightly and create the illusion of shadow figures. Bhangarh's ruins function as a natural laboratory for this effect. As high winds navigate the maze of roofless stone corridors and narrow passageways, the air is forced into these low-frequency vibrations, essentially recreating Tandy's experiment across the entire fortress. Adding to this environmental acoustic effect is the ground itself. Bhangarh sits directly in Seismic Zone 4. Deep earth movements and shifting rocks constantly produce microtremors that humans perceive as a sudden, inexplicable sense of unease. A sudden chill, a sense of dread, and shadowy movements in the corner of your eye are textbook biological reactions. Visitors are simply feeling the invisible acoustic physics of wind and seismic pressure moving through a crumbling stone city. There is another layer to this phenomenon, known as suggestibility. In 2008, researchers at Goldsmiths University placed volunteers in a completely empty, plain white room. Because the participants were told the room might have a haunting presence, over 20% reported physical sensations of dizziness, the feeling of being watched, and outright terror. Combine that suggestibility with pareidolia, our brain's evolutionary hardwiring to find faces and human shapes in random patterns. When the Viking orbiter photographed Mars in 1976, millions saw a human face in the dirt. We are biologically desperate to see each other, even in the rocks of another planet. Every tourist arrives at Bhangarh already primed by thousands of internet stories. As they walk through the dim, broken architecture, their brain works overtime, translating ordinary shadows into the cursed citizens of Singhiya's myth. The Archaeological Survey of India's Warning Board functions as a measure of biological safety. It addresses the immediate physical dangers present within the park after dark. Bhangarh Fort sits roughly 50 kilometers from the Sariska Tiger Reserve. At night, the ruins are routinely patrolled by Bengal tigers and leopards hunting for prey among the stone walls. And those harrowing reports of women crying in the distance? The area is highly populated by wild hyenas, whose nocturnal vocalizations perfectly mimic the sounds of human screaming and weeping. Between collapsing multi-ton ceilings in pitch darkness apex predators using the fort as a hunting ground, and packs of hyenas screaming in the brush, a highly suggestible brain easily maps a ghost story onto a very real physical threat. The historical record lacks any trace of the legend's key figures. Researchers combing through stone inscriptions and contemporary documents found no mention of a Princess Ratnavati or a tantric named Singya. Bhangarh's actual collapse was driven by the catastrophic 1783 Chalisa famine. This massive climate disaster, caused by unusual El Niño patterns, forced the city's 9,000 households to abandon their homes in a desperate search for food and water. This forces a fascinating question. If the city was emptied by a brutal, historically documented drought, why do people spend so much energy telling tales of a magical curse? The human mind prefers narrative order over chaos. A story with a clear villain and a defined curse creates an illusion of control. A massive, random climate disaster that starves thousands of people indiscriminately is deeply, existentially terrifying. We invent monsters to give our fears a shape we can understand. The physicist Marie Curie famously noted, "Nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood." Now is the time to understand more, so that we may fear less. Bhangarh is empty today, but not haunted. It stands as a profound monument to the acoustic quirks of ruined architecture, the devastating reality of environmental collapse, and humanity's enduring need to weave stories in the dark.